Well, everybody's okay with being recorded. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come back and share some of my hard-earned wisdom with you. There are some new faces I don't recognize. Real quick, can you just introduce yourselves?
I'm Elsie Valencia.
Okay.
One of the interns.
Nice to meet you, Elsie.
Lydia. Great.
Yes. Sure.
Hunter.
Hey, Hunter. Okay, very good. Okay, perfect. Let me. Okay. So Carly asked me if I would share some of my spiels about vaccinations with you. And as we were saying before, we do not have to stick to this script. So I have 4 vaccines that I'm focusing on during this presentation. I felt like they were the most urgent ones, timely. But if there are questions about other vaccines and how I kind of pitch those to patients or address certain questions that you're getting a lot, we can absolutely go into those things too. All right. So Utah is an interesting place to practice because we have a healthy population, we have a young population, and generally one that doesn't have a lot of qualms with like medical authority, but we definitely lag behind the rest of the country in certain vaccines for cultural, social, political reasons. And we have a growing number of parents that are using the state's non-medical exemption system. And there are some bills on Capitol Hill this legislative session that would make it even easier to, if they pass, to get a non-medical exemption. So I don't know if you guys know about that process, but right now, basically, a parent can choose to exempt their child from the school required vaccines, but they first have to watch a little video that takes about 20 minutes, and they have to sign a paper. There's a bill on the Hill right now that would do away with that video requirement. So making it even easier than ever, to get an exemption for important vaccines and keep all of our kids safe. And this in the midst of a giant outbreak of measles. It's just great. So we have very high rates of non-medical exemptions, much more than the national average, median, I should say. And then, of course, there's political environment that we're in right now with the shakeup at the Health and Human Services Department. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's thrown out all of the actual experts and appointed a bunch of his buddies that are, expert witnesses in vaccine injury cases, people who have very clear agendas, very obvious conflicts of interest. And these people are changing the childhood vaccination schedules in bad ways. And we're having this rift that's now developing between medical specialty societies like ours, the American Academy of Family Practice, the American Academy of Pediatrics, where they are coming right out and saying, like, don't listen to the government, like, listen to us. We are the voice of reason here. That's not something I've ever seen happen. I don't know, have you ever seen that, Dr. Kirby? No, this is new territory, right? I never thought I'd be that guy who would tell my patients, like, don't listen to the government. Like, that sounds crazy, but here we are. So yeah, you're having to navigate all of this fun confusion for your patients and their parents. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be a family doctor right now. So biggest challenge we face is a growing outbreak of measles in our community. 250 cases and rising. North Carolina has more cases, but they have a much bigger population. So if you look at it per capita, ours is probably still the biggest outbreak in the country, which means it's probably the biggest outbreak in the world. Right? So, and as we all know, what we're shooting for here is herd immunity. And to have a herd immunity against measles, you need 95% uptake, and we're below 89. So just as a reminder, herd immunity makes a big difference, especially in those upper ranges, right? There's a big difference between 90 and 95% even. You can have very pretty good size, local outbreaks with even good rates of 90%. So this is why we've got to redouble our efforts and really try to get our population back up to that herd immunity threshold to avoid these outbreaks. Number two, DTaP. So the problem here is completion of this series, right? This is a series of 4 vaccines, which are supposed to all be given before age 2. It's really hard to make sure that kids are coming in for all those shots. Parents get fatigued. Parents get, worried about, well, what about all the aluminum in these things? Isn't that going to hurt my kid? And for whatever reason, they end up missing sometimes 1 or more of these boosters before age 2, and that jeopardizes their ability to fight off these infections long term. Our goal is a 90% target. We're below that in Utah, and that's gotten a lot worse since the pandemic. So you can see in 2020, the number of pertussis cases in the state is about 150, kind of dropped in 2021, 2022, probably because of all the social distancing that we were doing. But then because vaccination rates fell, we've seen year over year rises in pertussis in the state. It's now double what it was in 2020. Number 3, something near and dear to my heart. This is actually what I did my residency QI project on, is adolescent vaccinations. So HPV. HPV uptake in Utah is tough, right? A lot of parents have icky feelings about it because it's an STD. And so we have good rates for other things that are given at the same time, like meningitis and tetanus. But because this one's not required for school, a lot of parents opt out. So we're going to address that and kind of try to help you guys feel more comfortable in how you present it to people. And of course, this is another series, right, that needs to be completed. So if given before age 14, you can do this as a 2-dose series. If not, then it's 3. And again, you can give this up to age 45. So, definitely offer this to your sexually active younger adults as well. So, but this is a public health, victory, right? If you look at the amount of cervical cancer cases, so this is a study from the Lancet in the United Kingdom, looking at different cohorts that were born at different times and their rate of cervical cancer. Just this massive drop, right? This huge drop in cervical cancer cases among vaccinated. This is amazing, like to see a cancer go away, be cured. I mean, I know it's not a cure, because cure means you had it and get rid of it, but to see it eradicate, right? It's just incredible, and something we don't sell enough to our patients, right? About the amazing success of this vaccine. So we could do better. And last of all, the seasonal flu shot. So we have also seen after the pandemic a major decrease, especially in younger adults, in uptake of the seasonal flu vaccine. So if you look at year over year from 2020, flu season hospitalization rates, during the beginning of the pandemic, we saw no flu activity. It was weird, right? It's very quiet, almost like COVID had kind of filled that niche temporarily. But of course, it's only a brief interlude. And this most recent flu season, we've had, the highest number of hospitalizations in recent memory. So really bad seasons, one after another. And this is preventable, and this is not inevitable. So this is kind of my hope for today, that we'll focus on these 4 shots. We'll talk about, what's happening in our community. We'll address vaccine fatigue. We'll get more comfortable with presenting HPV as this public health, success story, and that we'll get comfortable teaching our patients about some, not all. We don't have to, we don't have to really get into the nitty gritty, but sometimes it helps people to understand the science behind these vaccines and why you have to get one every year and why that's so important. So other than these 4, are there other vaccines you all would like to talk about today?
It's not a vaccine, but I think the vitamin A shot,
For
especially
newborns.
for newborns.
Yeah.
Another one that's been
Great. Yes.
Hep B for newborns as well.
Hep B for newborns. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. We'll try to fit those in at the end. Any others? Okay. Love it. All right. So the important thing to remember here is that when asked by the Pew Research Forum and other polling places, patients still report that they trust their own doctor more than anybody, especially their family doctor. They trust them more than AI. They trust them more than the government. They trust them more than social media influencers. So you still have power. You still have cred, right? So remember that. Believe in yourself. And when you give someone a strong recommendation, like literally say the words, "I strongly recommend that you do this," that goes a long way to overcoming a lot of the barriers that people might have. Right? They will actually like, "Oh, wow, okay, that's huge." Like, so don't abuse it, right? Only use that when you have strong evidence to support what you're about to say next. But vaccines definitely carry that kind of strong evidence. And then last of all, just remember, vaccines are primary prevention, right? This is the best thing that we can give people is stop something before it happens. We should be spending 90% of our healthcare dollars and time on primary prevention, but we don't. We only spend like 10. But this is one thing that we can do that is primary prevention. So make sure you're prioritizing that in your brain accordingly. Okay, so this next part is kind of our workshop. That's kind of what I'm imagining here, very interactive. Maybe we can even like split into small groups, like of 2 or 3, and practice these little things with each other. Let's start with the MMR. So most important thing is don't even frame it as a choice. Like just assume that your patient is on board already, right? Make it awkward for them to have to say, "Oh, actually, I don't want to do that," right? Because even that little bit of friction might cause them to not say that. I know that sounds manipulative. I own that. It's okay, right? It's okay to use tactics when you are in the right. Okay. So the little spiel that I have is, since we've had this huge local outbreak, and your child is due for their first or second dose of MMR, we're going to take care of that today. We're going to get your child protected, before this visit is over. I will, right? That kind of language shows them that you care about them, that you care about their child. And it makes it, I think, much more difficult for them to say, "Well, this YouTube video I watched from this person who I don't know and doesn't know anything about me, and I don't know anything about their motives. Anyway, they said blah, blah, blah about the MMR vaccine," right? That's, I think, they're going to immediately kind of see the weakness in whatever argument they're about to give you if you start with that presumption that we're doing this today. Okay. So in addition to that, there are some things that you might hear, right, from your patients about the MMR vaccine. It's important to listen and to ask, so I talk about this a little bit later, but whenever a patient says no thanks to a vaccine recommendation from me, I always ask, "Can I ask why?" And I ask that in as sincere a voice as I can, not trying to be judgmental or condescending, like, "Huh, really?" Like be actually curious. And if you are truly curious and like, "Oh, okay," like that kind of opens the floor, so to speak, where people feel like they can actually tell you what the barrier is and you can get to the bottom of it. And then validate that, right? Even if it's totally hopeless, like, "Okay, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. You're concerned about this. Let's talk about that." So what are some of the things you've heard about the MMR vaccine, reasons people are, hesitant? Autism. Okay. Yeah. Even though that's been thoroughly debunked, we hear it all the time.
I hear people who say, "I don't believe in vaccines in general,"
Uh-huh.
and then they don't really have an explanation why.
Okay, so not specific to this one, but yeah. Okay.
And then they aren't willing
To elaborate. Yeah. Okay. What else?
Patients are just confused because it's so much one thing. Like 3 vaccines, how is that?
Yep.
Possible?
Yep. Okay. Hear that one too.
I've heard that, well, if the vaccine works, why are we having an outbreak now? Even though
Yeah.
it's contradictory because they're not getting it, but
Okay. Good. What about specific to the MMR or how it works, like the fact that it's a live vaccine? You guys get any pushback on that at all? No.
I don't think I've had people who know that level of detail about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. has any of you ever gotten any pushback about the fact that these vaccines were first developed using aborted fetal tissue? No,
Heard that
is that
once.
news to you? You've heard it once.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll share a little personal anecdote. I was just on the telephone this morning with a father of a 9-year-old child patient of mine who is in a shared custody arrangement with his ex-wife and their daughter. Ex-wife has fully embraced this new kind of new age religion, for lack of a better word, that thinks of vaccines, especially any vaccine that might have like human tissue in there, like aborted fetal tissue, as like evil and toxic and dangerous. She's had 1 dose of MMR, has not yet had her 2nd dose. And they are literally having to get like lawyers and the court involved to figure out like what to do about this. I told Dad I would be more than happy to, join the case to testify under oath, to try to help him, get the court's approval to vaccinate. I mean, technically we don't need mom's approval in Utah. As long as you have consent of one parent, you're fine. But he wants to try to, keep things amicable with the ex-wife. Very noble. I very much in support. But so he's trying to do this, I feel like, a very diplomatic way. And so we were on the phone today. He said, if this may have to go to court, but right now we're really trying hard to work it out. So, there's 4 vaccines she's overdue for. Would you be okay with like a delayed schedule rather than doing them all at once? And I was like, absolutely. He said, well, how would you prioritize them? I'd say, well, MMR now, like that's non-negotiable. We're in the midst of a massive outbreak. Like we need to protect her. All the other ones can wait, right? If we space them out every 4 to 6 weeks, totally fine with me. If we don't get to the flu shot this year, that's okay too. Like I am happy to compromise with her on those other ones, not this one. Like this one we have to do. And he said, okay, I think we can make that argument, and I think the other side will. So that's the amount of like die on this hill. That's what I'm trying to say. Like this is the hill that you want to choose to die on. Okay, so local context, provide reassurance. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this slide. So I guess before we move on to tetanus, did you guys want to hear like any specific spiel I have about concerns for MMR?
I mean, what do you say if someone says aborted human fetuses?
Yeah, so these vaccines, the live vaccines, were initially developed using tissue from 2 aborted fetuses back in the 60s. At this point, the amount of like their proteins or DNA or anything like that may be found in these vaccines is somewhere in the parts per billion range, right? So you're literally getting more of my tissue in your body from me speaking in this room right now than you would get from one of these people from receiving this vaccine, right? Like you're getting more contamination, however you want to use that, from just being in the same room, being on a bus with other people, sharing food with other people, sharing a bathroom with other people, than you would get from one of these vaccines.
I want to hear your spiel on like the dangers of measles. Like a lot of people think it's a rash and a fever and it goes away. It's pretty harmless and self-limiting.
Yeah, and thankfully for most people who get measles, that is true. It's just a really bad cold and a rash. But unfortunately, there were, before the vaccine came out, we would lose hundreds of thousands of children every year to measles in this country, or around the world, I should say. Because even though the risk of severe cases is small, if enough people get it, you're going to have some people with severe cases. I mean, look at what happened in Texas. Those were healthy kids who got measles and died. And that is 100% preventable. So why would you take a risk with your own child, right? So the major issues that we see with measles are encephalitis, so inflammation of the brain and the tissues around the brain, which can lead to permanent brain damage, even if that person survives. And then infertility, right? Because these tend to attack male gonads in particular, right? So don't you want to be a grandparent? Don't you want your kid to have that inborn God-given right to have their own children? Like, didn't you do whatever you could to preserve that? So that's how I approach that. What else? Okay. If nothing else, we'll keep going. So let's talk about DTaP. So the 4-dose completion by age 2 drops well below the 90%. So my little spiel that I've put together here is we've done a great job. Like, focus on the positive, right? Like, your kid has already had their first 3 doses. They're so close, right? We just have 1 more dose to go, and then they won't need this again until junior high. And so that last dose is actually the most important dose. You know, this is the thing that's going to put them over the edge where they're going to be totally protected if they get exposed to tetanus or pertussis. Thankfully, we never see diphtheria in this country because this vaccine is so effective. Diphtheria used to be a big cause of childhood mortality prior to the age of the antibiotics and the vaccine. So let's get this done. Let's just get it over with so that we can keep your child safe and don't have to worry about them getting this nasty cough that lasts for 3 months. That's all I've said about this one. Just focus on progress they've already made. Explain it's yeah, it's 4 doses, but let's get it over with. Does anybody know why it takes 4 doses? No. So why do we have all 3 of these things in the same shot? I guess I'll ask it that way. What do diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis have in common? Toxins, yes. So the AB toxin. So it's not something that's innate to the bacterium itself, right? It's something the bacterium produces. That is what we're trying to protect you against. So that's why it takes higher levels of antibodies to give you protection, because you're not fighting off the bacteria with this vaccine. We're protecting the body against the toxins. And I think sometimes explaining that to people might be helpful depending on their level of medical literacy. That might actually be like, oh, okay, makes sense. Okay.
Good. Sorry, since this one's also young, I should ask the last one, but how do you deal with the autism?
The autism question.
Yeah.
Yes. Honestly, it's so easy to flip that one around. So because there is a link between autism and vaccines. And it is the opposite of what most people think, right? There was a big study in England that showed that mothers who got flu when they were pregnant, especially in 1st and 2nd trimester, their children were much higher risk of developing autism than mothers who were vaccinated and did not get it. Right? So vaccines are protective against autism. They don't come from it. There have been huge studies involving literally millions of people, both retrospective and prospective studies at this point, gold standard studies that have shown no association. And like, if there was some sort of link, we would have found it, right? We would all know. And the guy who published this paper, in the Lancet way back when, has been thoroughly disqualified. He's lost his medical license. The paper has been retracted. Like, he's had to go to court multiple times over fraud from this paper. Like, the amount of damage that Dr. Wakefield did can't be calculated. It's really, if there's a hell, he better be going. That's all I have to say. And I would say that in front of a patient too. Sometimes it's good to let them see a little bit of your righteous anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I would say on that. All right, moving on. Spiel number 3, HPV. So the rate in Utah for completion of the HPV series is about 57%, well below the national average. So what I would say is this is all about cancer, right? So today we are giving so-and-so this vaccine because it's a cancer preventing shot. And if we give it by age 9 or 11, the body's immune system is primed and ready. Like, this is the best possible time we could give it, where, she or he will be protected for the rest of their life. We'll never even have to worry. In fact, there may come a time where we won't even have to do a pap smear on this person because she had the vaccine when she was 9, right? I know you've all heard that there's this shift now where we're going to like HPC self-swabbing in place of, yeah, I've been promising my patients that for years. It's really nice to finally see that coming to fruition. I love the seatbelt analogy, right? Like a lot of people, and this can be used for lots of different vaccines. They're like, well, I just never get sick. So why would I need to take a shot? It's like, all right, I assume you're a pretty good driver, right? Oh, I think so. Most people think they're good. Do you still wear a seatbelt every time you get in the car? Well, yeah, it's the law. I have to. It's like, okay, even if it wasn't the law, would you do it anyway? And most people are like, well, yeah, I don't want to get in a wreck and being restrained. That's dumb. I was like, okay, I love your logic. Apply that logic here, right? It is the same logic, right? You do the thing so that in the event, in the low likelihood event, unlikely that you are to be exposed to XYZ disease, you are protected. You will be fine. You'll have a bruise and not, a missing appendage, right? Or permanent brain damage, right? From a accident that it was not even your fault, right? You were T-boned, like you had no control over that situation, but you're protected because you wore your seatbelt, right? It is the exact same logic with vaccines. It is prevention. I love, and most people, when I use that little, thought experiment with them, they do like, okay, yeah, you're right. Even if they don't agree to do the vaccine, they at least agree that the logic is sound, right? And that's half the battle. Okay. So what are some other specific hesitation things you get from parents about the HPV vaccine?
Why don't we just do it when he's 18?
So I would go back to the immune system is not as strong at 18 as it is when they're 9 and 10, right? That is when you're going to get the best lifelong response. So if we can give it early, when that immune system is like running on all cylinders.
I've come across like Instagram videos and stuff that's like Gardasil is specifically associated with these vaccine injuries. And I don't know what, I haven't watched them to know, but like, do you know what people's specific concern is?
So there is a higher rate of syncope, right? We know that some people, even people that get the HPV vaccine do pass out
During the vaccine?
or right after, within the first few minutes, right? So I do, especially if it's the first time that one of my patients is getting these, I usually have them wait, just, in the exam room, wait 15 minutes, observe them. If that 15 minutes goes by and they're feeling fine, I think the chances of them having a syncopal episode after leaving are very, very small. But I've had at least 4 young girls who have passed out.
And this is like separate from just like vasovagal, like because they're getting a shot.
I don't know. Yeah. Have you experienced that too, Dr. Kirby?
Not yet.
Yeah.
What is it after the vaccines get? Oh, maybe I said the book after that.
Yeah, usually within the first 15 minutes, which makes me think it is a vasovagal response, right? But it's probably because it's an adjuvant vaccine, right? So it's funny that we don't see that same kind of thing with other adjuvant vaccines like Tdap or, pneumonia. But you also get the localized reaction, right? The pain, it hurts going in. I think it's more that too. The HPV seems to sting a little bit more. And I think that that's so unexpected for some people that that triggers the vasovagal
Yeah, I
reaction.
heard it hurts more.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that.
Yeah.
If they pass out the first vaccine, will they pass out the second?
It depends on their emotional readiness, I think. But yes, I have definitely had some people that have been hesitant to complete the series, understandably, if they passed out the first time. So what I'll do for them usually is a good numbing and distraction technique, and then have them lie down.
This is kind of more diabetes Utah specific, but in my day and age when I started up, I was the only one in my friend group allowed to get this vaccine because all of my friends' parents were like, it encourages sexual behavior.
Yeah.
What do you talk about with parents who are
So again, that has been studied. We've looked into this, and the reverse is true, right? So parents who are having conversations with their teenagers about the harm of underage sexual activity are less likely to engage in it. And this is a great opening to have this conversation that no parent, relishes the idea of having, right? But if this is an opportunity that's, brought on by the doctor started this conversation, I'm just here to finish it, right? Then that actually protects your teenager from risky sex. So they're less likely to get pregnant, they're less likely to get STDs and to delay their sexual debut if you're talking to them about it. So, and I'm happy to get you that study if you'd like.
Great.
Okay, great. Other hesitation points that you've run into. So we addressed the pain and the syncope and the question about, encouraging risky sex, all very valid points. Again, you always want to validate what your parent says or asks, but then just come back ready with a response.
Do you know, is there any data that this is also, because how many strains are in the most recent?
9.
9. Do any of those protect against like the warts you get on your hand?
So there are hundreds of strains of HPV, right? And so only 9 of them are in the vaccine, as far as I know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of
Yeah.
That's the high risk.
So that includes 16, 18, and 45, I believe, the 3 that are known to be associated with cancer, plus 6 others. So I don't know if people are really less likely to get other kinds of warts.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. But my suspicion would be, that there's got to be some crossover between the different strains. So if you can fight off those 9, I think you're less likely in general to get the other ones as well, but I don't have any data to support that.
Can I ask it's not really related to the Spiels, just a couple of questions about age. That have come up in my clinic,
Yeah.
not about maybe vaccine. I had one patient who was vaccinated and she keeps coming back positive for high risk strains.
Fortunate.
16, 18.
Yeah.
She's like, why is this happening? She's like, no, vaccine's perfect. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's the answer. Some people's immune systems don't respond the way that we hope or expect. Does she get other frequent infections? No. Okay. Just very unlucky. Okay.
Or, sorry.
You first.
This was it was just about where you get vaccines if your insurance will cover it. If you're older, then she's going to help us.
Yeah, they're. I know they have a sliding scale over there. So each of these.
Vaccines cheaper than
Yeah, they can.
like half as much.
It's still expensive. I mean, if you pay full price for these, they're $300 each. 300 change. So it's like $1,000 to complete the series if you're an adult. So it would still be pricey, even at the health department, but way better than getting cancer.
I think a tough one for me, with this one, for parents and even as a parent, is I don't want this to be taken wrong, but I'm just gonna put it out there. So people think, including myself sometimes. This is primarily for women, and we're asking young men to do it, and their benefit is lower than the risk of penile cancer is very low.
Yeah.
But if we vaccinate all these boys, we're gonna prevent a lot of cervical cancer. That's a little bit of a hard sell on an individual level. Like,
Yeah.
the parents understand this, and it has to be that specific question.
For sure. Yeah. So what I would just say is, yes, the main cancer we're trying to prevent here is penile cancer, but HPV is also indicated or implicated in other cancers as well. Cancers of the rectum and anus, cancers of the head and neck, which are horrible cancers. Nobody not wish that on your worst enemy. And so if I told you I have this vaccine that can protect your child against pancreatic cancer or against even melanoma, I think most people would say, sign me up. Like, I don't care if it's 5 doses, I'll take it. Right? But because this one is STD, and people feel like, well, my child will never get an STD. Right? My child will never have sex until they're married. But people get weird about it, and that's just, that logic doesn't make sense if you get to the root of it. And the other thing I would say is like, well, whatever happened to children, right? Like we men are, it's kind of like our job, right? At least that's what we tell ourselves, and what our society tells us is like, it's our job to protect the women in our lives, right? So what? Like, wouldn't you do something, even if it was a small sacrifice, to protect your daughter or your wife or your sister? Like, isn't that kind of what society expects from you to be like? Isn't that healthy masculinity? Like, that's what I would say to that. And maybe that's a little manipulative again.
I I think it's the same, it kind of goes in the same bucket as our reasoning behind vaccinating everyone against flu, for example, or COVID.
Yeah.
That, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but we are definitely relying on segments of the population that aren't going to get very sick to protect those that are going to get very sick.
100%.
And that's a little tricky, you know, in a society that really, I would say more than some other places, it's about individuals than the community.
Right.
So those are a little tricky to get around. So
I think maybe if you just probe your patient a little bit to try to understand their values, like if they are more of an individualistic person, I think those people tend to be a little bit more like old fashioned when it comes to like gender roles too. And so maybe that is you're in there. It's like, oh, isn't it her role then to be the protector?
I'm gonna push that button.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not above using.
I've told parents before, like, well, you're not getting your kid vaccinated. You're relying on me vaccinating my kids. I think that's kind of rude.
Yeah.
I don't say it quite that bluntly, but
Yeah.
that's what happened.
Yeah.
They're depending on her
Yeah.
rather than like doing their part.
Yeah. Do your part. Yeah. Be part of the solution.
I say it in a nicer way, but I have said that.
Yeah. I definitely told people like be part of the solution. Like we need everybody. Like we need, especially the young and healthy people that are at low risk for bad case. Like it's way more important that we get you, you know, like and all of you. But yeah, it is a hard sell for sure. It can be. Okay, well, let's go to. So the other thing that I'd like to do is when you are giving a recommendation to the parents of a junior high age child, like that age 12, when you're recommending all three of these, plus perhaps flu, don't save HPV for last, right? Put it in the middle so that people understand this one is just as highly recommended. Don't even bring up the fact that it's optional for school, right? Just sandwich it. And that simple little change has been shown to dramatically increase uptake. You're not even saying something that's like manipulative, you're just changing the order, right? It's that simple. Okay, moving on, the flu. So, yeah, as I mentioned, we've had pretty dismal rates, especially among young, healthy adults, of getting the flu shot in recent years. And as a result, we've seen higher and higher rates of hospitalizations and unfortunately some deaths. So what I would say is, you know, we're in the midst of a pretty bad flu season. You know, last year was the worst we'd seen in decades, and this year's even worse than last year so far. So if you can say this, you know, like I've already had mine, or I'm getting it. And if you have kids, like I'm giving it to my kid, right? I'm not recommending anything to you that I wouldn't do myself or that I wouldn't give to the people I love. And I recommend it for you and your child as well. And, you know, while the flu vaccine is not 100% effective against all respiratory viruses that you may be exposed to this season, it will keep you out of the ER. It will keep you out of the hospital or the ICU. Right? That's the main benefit here. And make sure that, you know, just a bad week or a couple of days where you have to be out of school or out of work doesn't turn into like the worst week of your life. So even though it takes a little bit of time, I also find that it's really helpful sometimes to teach people why the vaccine is needed every year. Because a lot of people do kind of get hung up on this, like, oh, I just had that. You know, didn't I just have that? And why do I have to get one of those every year? You know, why can't you guys figure this out? And that's fair. You know, like some of the smartest people in the world are working on a universal flu shot. I do think we'll have one within the next 10, 15 years, but they've been saying that for a while. So it's a hard nut to crack, right? We have to get a vaccine that will protect you against all versions of the H protein and the N protein, and that is no easy feat. So it will probably happen, but in the meantime, the best defense we have is what we've been doing. So do you guys know how the different strains are chosen historically? Yeah. Anybody not know?
I don't know.
No? Okay. So in a typical year, the CDC, along with its partners in the WHO, which we have now withdrawn from, will communicate with the Southern Hemisphere during our summer. You know, so they'll get data from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Argentina, about what's going on in their countries during the height of their flu season, which strains. They put that data into a supercomputer that can, predict travel and migration and all that stuff. And then they use that data to predict which strains are most likely to come north when it's our turn. They get that information to the drug companies sometime in August. The drug companies have 1 month, basically, 2 maybe, to put those strains in a vaccine to, produce them from scratch. Or if they have stockpiled versions of that same vaccine, they can release those, which is great. And then they get those to market in September, right? That's how we do it. So, but the traditional flu shot only contains 4 strains, right? And so the chances that you're going to miss one, like a weird rogue one that wasn't, predicted in the model at any given year, that risk is, 25 to 50%. So, but still, a 50 to 75% effective vaccine is pretty darn good. And some years it's even better. It's 80, 90% effective. So until we have a universal vaccine, this method that we've traditionally relied on since the 80s is the best, protection we have against a pandemic influenza.
What the changes have long?
Yeah.
Are there any, I'm not up on whether or not there are any different if that's affecting.
So I think the drug companies are going to have to create their own mini CDCs. They're going to have to start to do the communication independently with our partners in the WHO, former partners. That is not great. Not great.
So there are the 4 strains. Is that?
So the quadrivalent,
Yeah.
like Fluvaval and Fluvax and those other main ones that we give to people are usually 4. Sometimes they can be 5, like in a weird year where there's like avian or swine. They'll add a 5th, but most of the time it's 4. And then of course there's the flu block, which we have for those kind of middle-aged folks, which can contain up to 10. And then we've got our high dose flu shots, which don't change year to year. They're always the same, which are 15 and more, or 15 strains. And we give those to our 65 and older or our, compromised patients.
That's just different patient and antigens.
Yep.
How it is.
Now that I'm saying this out loud, I don't know if this is true, but I was told or read somewhere that even if like the strain is wrong, it's giving your body more data. So in future years, you potentially could recognize more antigens.
Yeah, I think that is probably true. I think the more data you give your immune system in general, the better your immune system is going to function. Right? Like if you think about kids in daycare, right, they're exposed to probably hundreds of new viruses, like every single day. And only a few of them actually cause a syndrome, but the body's immune system is creating a response to every single one of them. So it sucks for parents to have kids in daycare. It's pretty good for the kid. So, yeah. Okay. And one thing I like to say to my new patients, especially the first time I see them, is I want you to think of me as your personal vaccine expert. Like you are literally paying me to know what I'm talking about, right? So whenever you have a question about a vaccine, come to me first. You don't have to ask Dr. Google or ChatGPT. Like you can ask me, and I will probably know the answer. And if I don't know the answer, I will find it from a reputable source. So you don't have to do that work. I will get you the right answer. And sometimes I can see an audible or like a visible relaxation in my patient. Like, oh God, because I don't have time. And sometimes people are like a little skeptical at first, but I think that like whenever you make a promise or a covenant with a person, like I feel like that helps to engage a deeper level of interaction that most patients really appreciate. Okay. All right. So priorities, right? I've tried to design this slide so that you can kind of get a visual representation, right? So the biggest chunk here is MMR. Like I said before, die on this hill, right? Especially now, we're in the midst of a huge outbreak. It's non-negotiable, right? Your duty as that kid's physician is to get them vaccinated. You must do everything in your power, short of like, assault. Okay. I'm not mincing words because this is really important. Next biggest priority, DTaP. Don't die on the hill, but defend it, right? That is important. Super important. Focus on series completion It is not easy. It is doable. And then the last two, right? These are important as well. But the cool thing about flu shots is, you'll get a new opportunity every single year, right? And for the HPV, don't let that ruin a relationship with a family, but plant that seed. You'll have other opportunities to get that kid vaccinated. Thankfully, there's no such thing as an HPV season, right? You'll have lots of chances. Okay. All right. So I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this slide, but basically I was just trying to show a tiered approach and how you, even regardless of what that person's response is, there's more you can do, right? Like, don't ever just accept defeat, right? If they say no, don't assume you even know why they're saying no, right? You may not know. It may be a really simple question that they have that they're just embarrassed to ask. So pursue it, ask why, and challenge whenever appropriate. Not too much, right? Like, choose your battles, but don't ever just accept no, not like carte blanche. Like, okay. And then I've listed a couple of what I think are really helpful phrases here, and these are in no particular order. But I guess my main points here were like, always be respectful, always be non-judgmental, always be curious and open-minded, open-hearted to what your patients have to say. Don't ruin the relationship over these things. And remember, you are the expert here. Like, you have a degree. You have lots of clinical experience. Believe in yourself. Don't be shy, right? There's this thing called the what is it? It's an effect where like uninformed people are much more confident than they should be. And informed, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Thank you so much. Yeah, don't let that. Yeah, don't let that wreck your confidence, right? Like, speak confidently, speak boldly, give strong recommendations when you know you have the power of science behind you. Okay. So sorry, we didn't break up into groups. So why don't we practice a couple of these phrases with each other and just see how they roll off the tongue, and maybe change it a little bit so it feels more like your own. So let's take a few minutes, find a partner. Let's practice these, maybe two, and so on.
Can I ask real quick?
Yeah.
Like in a well-child visit, do you like to do vaccine talk right at the end?
No.
Middle, beginning?
Beginning, yes. So one thing that also shows increased uptake is talk about vaccines at the beginning.
Okay.
And then what I do is I send my MA a little instant message saying, please get these ready. So that the minute I walk out of that room, they're walking in, right? You give that person as little time to second guess themselves as possible.
Okay.
So that has worked really
I had
well.
one child check the other day, 6-month-old.
Okay, please.
He's not.
You got what?
Like, I just smiled so much to me. He came so like messy. I was like, okay. We can do it.
Yeah, I think especially because I was to the, like, I just do it again.